Sounds like if that's spiking the audio, that's a lot.
Okay, welcome back to session 3 of the Revenue U and Propel ICT's market validation workshops. Today we're going to be talking about hypothesis testing. Okay, that's probably good enough for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So why am I asking you to think a little bit less like a business person and a little bit more like a scientist? Well, it's because in these early stages, you're probably doing a lot more learning than you are earning. And the reality is every new venture we build, especially if it's an innovative startup, is filled with unknown variables. And the burden on us as founders is to find, Right. Okay, we'll try that one again. Okay, so why am I asking you to think a little bit less like a business person and a little bit more like a scientist? Well, the reality is at this stage, you're probably doing a lot more learning than you are earning. And the reality of it is anytime we start a new venture, especially if it's an innovative new venture like yours, there's tons of unknown variables. There's an endless number of unknown variables. And the burden on us as founders is to find a method, to find a way to test each of those variables so that we can de-risk our business. All right, so we'll try that one more time. So why am I asking you to think a little bit less like a little business person and a little bit more like a scientist? Well, the reality is at this stage in the journey, you're probably doing a lot more learning than you are earning. And the reality is there's, in any new venture, there's dozens and dozens of unknown variables. And if it's an innovative new venture like yours, man, there's limitless unknown variables. The burden on us as founders is to find some methodology to test each of these variables along the way so that we de-risk our business. Okay. All right. So as an example, we're going to turn back to Uber. So we'll reset the Wayback Machine to 2009. So the Black Eyed Peas were huge. Avatar was the biggest movie in theaters, and nothing really interesting had happened to Tiger Woods yet. So back in 2009, the way you got around is you hailed a cab until someone came to you with an idea for a ride-sharing program. And at the time, it was called Uber Cab. Now, there's a lot of unknown variables now. I know it's ubiquitous. I know we've probably all taken Ubers before. But if you think back to then, all the variables they had to test to see if someone was willing to use their service. Let's go through a few of them. Okay, so let's do that one again. Okay. So as an example, we use Uber again, and we'll set the Wayback Machine to 2009. The Black Eyed Peas were really, really popular. Avatar was the biggest movie in theaters, and nothing particularly interesting had happened to Tiger Woods yet. So back then, we took taxi cabs to get around, and then imagine someone came up to you and said, "Hey, I got this new way for you to get around town in transit, and you're going to use an app on your phone." I know now we take it for granted. We take Ubers all the time, but think about the variables and unknowns that had to get tested in that business back in 2009. Let's go through a few of them. Do we need a third one?
No, that's good.
Nothing interesting had happened to Tiger Woods yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, hypothesis 1, back then, would have been that people are willing to get into someone's strange personal vehicle and drive around. If you were to ask me in 2008, hey, we're going downtown, you should meet us there, I would say, yeah, I'm going to get a cab. They go, no. We're going to have a strange person you've never met drive up to your house, pick you up, put you in their car, and they'll bring you down to meet us. And I would say, cool, like that's a murdering service. Like, is that a murdering service? Like, who in their right mind would get in some weirdo's car who's got nothing better to do but drive you around and he's in a licensed taxi? That was a major variable for Uber to get over. Makes perfect sense now, but that was a factor. It was a hypothesis that they needed to test when they were building a startup like you are now. Okay, so we'll try one again. So hypothesis one is simply, are people willing to get into some stranger's personal vehicle and drive around? If you were to talk to me in 2008, 2009 and say, hey, John, we're going downtown, you should meet us there. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a cab. And they said, no, a stranger who's got nothing better to do on Friday night than drive their personal car. You get in their car and there's no markings on it. Just get in the car and they're going to bring you down to meet us. And I would have said to you, well, cool, like that's a murdering service. Is it? Is it a kidnapping service? Because that's what's going to happen to me. So I know now it's ubiquitous, but back then that was a massive hypothesis that Uber needed to test when they were at the stage you are at now. Okay. So hypothesis two revolves around the powerless feeling people have when they're waiting for a taxi. So I know we take for granted, you want to call an Uber and go downtown, but you could just as easily call a cab. What Uber's hypothesis was that customers are going to get not some value, tremendous emotional value out of looking at the screen on their phone and seeing where the taxi cab or seeing where the Uber is. Doesn't make the car get there any faster, but there's going to be enormous value in the minds of our customers simply by feeling that control of going in and logging in and being able to tell where on the map the car is to come pick you up in real time. That was a hypothesis that makes perfect sense to us now, but back in 2009 had to be tested by Uber. So the second hypothesis Uber had is that people feel powerless and helpless while waiting for a taxi cab. And that if they could look at their phone and see where their ride is on a map, it's going to give them not some emotional value, tremendous emotional value. Doesn't make the car get there any faster, but people feel more in control of the situation. They're going to be happier simply by knowing where their driver is. That was a hypothesis that had to be tested back in 2009. We take it for granted now. When they were in the same boat you are, this was one of the hypotheses that had to be tested. It needed to be true for Uber to have a successful business. Do we need one more? And the third hypothesis Uber had was that people are comfortable with mobile phone payments. Once again, something we can kind of take for granted now, but years ago, or even in 2009, that was a big concept. This concept that people were comfortable enough with their phones and their technology and internet banking that they were willing to pay for taxi cabs using simply a phone and never putting in a PIN number or actually going and giving anyone cash. We take it for granted now, but that was a hypothesis that needed to be true for Uber to have a successful business. The reality is, all of us have this series of dominoes, these hypotheses that need to be true in order for our business to be really, really successful. And you've got to figure that out for yourselves. Okay, we'll do this last one more time. Hypothesis 3 is that people would be comfortable paying for rides with their mobile phone. Once again, kind of a novel concept, right? Try it again. Okay. And hypothesis 3 is that people will feel comfortable paying with their mobile phone. So once again, we take it for granted now, but back in 2009, it was a bit of a novel concept. It was a hypothesis that Uber had that people would be comfortable, not having to put in a PIN number, not having to give someone cash, not having to, use a debit machine. The notion that people would be comfortable enough with their mobile technology to allow themselves to pay for their taxis using it, that was a huge hypothesis back in 2009. So it's the notion that all of our business have these domino hypotheses that need to be true in order for us to be successful, you have to take a moment and identify what those hypotheses are in your business and figure out a way to test them. Okay. And that's just it. That's hypothesis testing. You're making bets with yourself against predicted outcomes. Compare the data you get with the hypothesis and uncover insights. Yeah. All right. Compare the data you collect with the hypothesis you made and try and uncover some kind of insights. You got to remember, hypotheses keep you honest. It's okay to be wrong. You don't want to be that founder that's just crossing their fingers and forcing the issue, and really people are stupid if they don't think what we're doing is a good idea. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have your hypothesis disproven. Hypotheses keep you honest. It's good to be wrong.
Build up that memory card.
No worries. I think, yeah, there's only a couple more slides here.
Good to go.
Okay, awesome. Great. Hypotheses keep you honest. It's good to be wrong. You don't want to be that founder that's just out there forcing the issue, thinking the world is stupid because they don't agree with you or they're not seeing the world the way you see it. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have your hypothesis disproven. And if you're wrong, you've got to understand why. Explain to me, why is it you aren't interested in this product? If you remember the story I told in session 2 about the lawyers that weren't interested in the lineups, there was a really valid reason why they weren't interested in solving that lineup problem. Every time someone tells me a feature we're working on or a new product idea is ridiculous, honestly, I get excited because now I'm going to start to learn something. Explain to me why this is a bad idea and stop me from wasting time and money trying to build something no one's going to use anyway. And if you're wrong, this is the opportunity to understand why. You'll remember the example I gave in the last session with the lawyers, the folks who were trying to solve the problem for lawyers lining up. There was a really good, compelling reason why lawyers didn't want that problem solved. Anytime someone, is not enthusiastic about what you're working on or the problem you're solving, take the time to understand why. I get excited when people tell me the feature we're building or product we're building is no good or they hate it, or that to me is amazing. Because take the time to explain to me why this is a terrible idea before I go and waste all kinds of time and money trying to build something no one's going to use anyway. All right. What we would argue you do is to take this hypothesis testing very seriously. Document the hypothesis that you have about your business. What are these things that need to be true in the market in order for you to be successful? And take a really disciplined way of testing them. For each of them, try and devise some kind of an experiment you can run and fill out a graph like this. And then with the data you've collected, understand how to move forward. The research tells us it's the companies that are disciplined in testing and disciplined in data collection are the ones that are more likely to succeed. Okay? And when it's all said and done, you're going to have a pile of data to review. Whoops. All right. All right. And at the end of all this, you're going to have a pile of data to review to help you make decisions moving forward. You're going to break your business into these unknown variables. You're going to collect data, and it's going to help you make decisions. Now, for those of you guys that are thinking, this is boring, I don't want to take this time, I just want to get to build my business, there's two really healthy reasons why I think this hypothesis testing is important to a business. And the first one is I find it comforting in the notion that you don't need to be a genius to be a startup founder. You don't need to be special. You don't need to be Mark Zuckerberg. You don't need an amazing idea to come out of like a lightning bolt and hit you, and that if you don't have this amazing idea, you can't be successful. What's more encouraging to me is the research tells us that if you just roll up your sleeves, take a disciplined process to engaging the market, figuring out what it is people want and the problems they have, what's causing those problems, how are they solving them, how could you help? If you do a good job of that, you can find a path to success. You don't need to be a genius to have a business. You can just simply follow this process and listen to people, and they'll tell you what to build that's going to be successful. And then the other reason I really like this notion of hypothesis testing in business is it stops founder infighting. I've had my co-founders for a number of years now, and sure, we've disagreed, but we never get into an argument so bad that we can't just go, wait a second, we're arguing over this feature, we're debating this thing. Everything in our business, we stop. As soon as we start to have an argument, we're like, okay, wait a second. Let's figure out a way to test the market, and we'll let them settle it. And that's a really, really healthy way to sort of run your business as founders. And so those are two reasons why I think this notion of hypothesis testing is something that you shouldn't just watch this video and then forget about. It's something you should adopt to your everyday lives. All right, I'll do one more on that one. Okay. So at the end of all this, you're going to have a pile of data that's going to help you make decisions on how you move forward in your business. If you've broken out the hypothesis and the unknown variables, you've tested them, you're literally de-risking your business. And so I know it seems kind of boring. You want to be out there building product and selling and starting your business. And so you're saying, John, this is not fun. Why are you asking me to slow down? There's sort of two really healthy, compelling reasons why I think you might want to adopt this hypothesis testing mindset to your business. And the first one is, I find it really encouraging that the research tells us you don't need to be special to have a startup. You don't need to be Mark Zuckerberg. You don't need to be a genius to build a successful company. Instead, if you take a really, disciplined approach to interviewing the market, understanding what problems people have, understanding how they want their problems solved, understanding their needs, documenting the whole thing, there's this path forward that'll lead you to building a successful business. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need to be special. So I find that notion really, really encouraging. The second piece is this notion of hypothesis testing really does stop founder infighting. So I've had my founders now for 4 years, and we really haven't had a major blow up. And in part, it's because every time we get into a heated debate, every time we get into an argument, we stop it right there and go, okay, fine. Let's just find a way to test the market, and we'll let them settle it. And that's a really healthy way to deal with product disagreements in your product roadmap. So those are two reasons why I think adopting a hypothesis testing attitude to your business is really healthy and something you should adopt today. Okay, awesome. So that's it for that one. 2 down.